former Disney theme park employees of Reddit. What are some dirty secrets or stories you can tell us about your time there? There are 3 hidden phones in the Magic Kingdom that when you pick up, have dialogue from Disney characters like a Stitch in Tomorrowland. During the construction of Pandora at Animal Kingdom, a very beloved superintendent passed away on the project of an immediate heart attack, mid-sentence, and, while opening the door to the construction trailer, George Burke just died. The project was very affected by this. His knowledge of the work that needed to be done was deep and irreplaceable. His laughter and personality was loved by all 1400 workers that were there. A couple years after he passed, we were finishing the project and found the perfect way to pay homage to George. They invited his family to the middle of an active construction site to let them view it. George's red hard hat, with the black Nordic cross on top, was attached to the rockwork in the middle of the flowing river, to the left of the entrance to Flight of Passage, and plastered over. The family, friends, and a few Imagineers were the only people there. Only we can point out where the hard hat is underneath the plaster, theming, and plants. I revisit the spot every time I go back to Pandora. Peace. Disneyland first interview papers include a blank outline of a person to indicate where you have tattoos. It's referenced if you want to change positions internally to indicate how said tattoos could be revealed based on what your new uniform would be. Maisel got the role of Cinderella at Disneyland Paris. She had to practice Cinderella's autograph over and over because, although different actresses play her all over the world, the signature of the character has to be identical anywhere it's signed for consistency. Buddy I went to college with was a Disney cast member. He had to learn how to write Goofy's name left-handed because Goofy was a lefty. He's naturally a righty, but that's the one thing he could do as a lefty, and had to write it in such a way that it didn't smear the glove he was wearing. It was a very unnatural way to hold a pen without the gloves on. You have to be in specific height ranges to play the different characters. Because Mickey's height range is so short, he's usually played by a woman. Likewise for Donald. Although the most successful and best known Donald that I knew while I worked there was a little person. When the princess face characters come backstage, they have to take off their dresses so they don't get dirty while they're on break. So the princesses are usually walking around in a smock and bloomers. If you see them back there, there is some serious cognitive dissonance when you walk back and see Snow White in her bloomers on her phone cursing up a storm. People sexually harass the characters super frequently. I was working with Ariel, and cast members will always count down before they take a photo, so people have time to get into position. I counted down, and this teen boy decided to try to rip off one of Ariel's shells. I had to open his camera and expose his film, so the photo didn't get developed and passed around. I found out later that I was supposed to take it to the codec shop to have the film developed and that one removed, but I'd always heard the rumors about ruining the film and nobody really trains you on that, so I just went with it. The little assholes deserved it. I think the worst part about character harassment is that Disney does not prosecute the guests, at least when I was there. When I was working in the 2000s, there was someone who harassed broken by a drunk guest that grabbed and twisted her arm really badly. Disney refused to prosecute, and I think she may have ended up with permanent nerve damage in her wrist, which really sucked because she was also a gymnast too. A friend of mine worked at Disney World. According to her, Epcot is the best place to work. When she was at the Magic Kingdom, she said she went home crying all the time because the moms were so mean. Disney Cruise Line here. I used to go into the complaint system and read all the guest complaints from previous cruises. The amount of complaints that were because of sheer stupidity on the guest's part is staggering. People seem to think because they are paying lots of money they are allowed to do or say whatever they want, which of course can be unsafe on a ship. This might break the magic, but a lot of Disney princes are gay and also bad at sex. Looking at you, Aladdin Naveen. We also had a foreign crew member caught molesting a child, and he was promptly thrown in jail. But you better believe that the media didn't cover it. Not a Disney employee, but I saw a sort of behind the scenes event at Disneyland that was interesting. There's no smoking at Disneyland, except in like 1 or 2 designated areas that may not even be there anymore, I'm not sure. Anyhow, I was waiting around the side of one of the attractions near the Space Mountain buildings that was next to a bunch of doors by a service entrance type area with virtually no one around. Guy decides to sneak a cig. He leans on the wall next to the doors, looks around and lights up a cigarette. Gent got 2 puffs in before the door next to him opened and a guy in a polo came out. Smoker drops his cigarette and grinds it out with his foot. Then follows Disney polo shirt guy into the building and the door closes. Best part. 30 seconds later. Door swings open. A custodian pops out. Sweeps the ground up cigarette butt into a dustbin in 1 second and backs into the doorway without ever touching the door as it closed in front of him. Whole thing took less than a minute. I have no clue what happened to the guy. A true story that is dirty ethically. Before I worked for them, when I was just an annual patch older, I got overcome by the heat and humidity. Almost had a heat stroke. At the bathrooms outside the Epcot entrance, 2 security guards wanted to take me to the park's first aid, but a Disney manager refused. He gets in the park when he buys a ticket. Manager walks away for a minute. Security guards say, "Man, I can't believe this, and what an operation." 30 minutes for Edie Creek Fire Department to show up. I was so sick I didn't even pull out my app until they got there. Security guard 1 says, "Now can he go to first aid?" Suddenly that manager is all about helping me and so apologetic. He pushed me in a wheelchair all the way to first aid. "Can I get you some water, sir?" Big duck infinite. Obligatory, not an employee, but from a school band. Interestingly enough, I was there for our school's performance, as we were going to march down Main Street in the evening. Before that though, we got a short behind the scenes look at one part of the park. It wasn't all too interesting, except maybe a few partially out of costume employees. While we were being told our path for our march, however, we were told about the color they used to paint the buildings outside of the park. Apparently, they are painted a specific shade of green, specifically made to be uninteresting, nicknamed Go Away Green. This is just so people who snoop around outside of the main attractions are less likely to go inside buildings they're not supposed to. Pretty neat. I've never worked there, but once, in a professional capacity, I was given a 6 AM walking tour of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride. What I was most struck by was the pirate characters up on bridges, or seen in windows, or on the attacking ship. None of them have any legs. They are top half only, mounted onto poles. If the boat riders can't see a part of an animatronic character, then it doesn't need to exist. Former amusement park employee in SoCal. In the 80s we had fantasy characters in full body suits like Disney. They would walk around, take pictures, shake hands with the guests. Well, LA gangbangers loved this amusement park, were always starting trouble. One of our characters in costume was lit on fire, had to jump into a park water feature to extinguish the flames. After that incident, they were assigned security chaperones for safety. Wasn't me, but my parents. Apparently, they don't always treat the employees so well. She was working in the nurses station and had a call for a costume character who had heat exhaustion. The costumes get extremely warm, especially in summer. He was advised to remove the costume and walk to the nurse building to recover, but wasn't allowed to. They were too busy trying to make sure that nobody saw him out of costume that they literally risked his health. The entertainment district is typically extremely strict. In Disneyland, in the Peter Pan ride, I was always in awe with the floating stars that you zoom by in the ride. Turns out they are just leads on the end of wire hangers attached to the walls, mostly that are wrapped in electrical tape. I worked there for 3 months 2 years ago with my GF at the time, and anything newsworthy that happens there, usually negative, immediately gets shot down by the official page of Disney. Twitter, Insta, Facebook, etc. They keep everything hush hush. Lighting struck a bathroom building, and there was a small fire in my GF. And I weren't working that day, but we were there enjoying the park for free because we are cast members, and she records it and posted it on her Twitter. News media pages were commenting and asking her questions like when, how, what's being done, And before she could reply, the Disney page said to disregard the video because it wasn't true and the video is edited, and the media pages stopped asking after that. She gets called into the office the next day and was super close to losing her job. The reason she didn't was because of how much seniority she had, but she was basically on probation after that. Disney is duck, they don't tell people shit. Former cast member from the early 90s. There was a central bank near the Magic Kingdom tunnel entrance where all the park gift shops, restaurants etc. would deposit the day's cash. Each day an armored truck would drive into the tunnel to haul away the loot. I can only imagine how much cash they took out there. Worked on the cruise ships for a year. Disney is super ducked up. A crew member died from an unknown illness a few years back, and after a year or so the body still hasn't been returned to the family. Despite their protests, and Disney were refusing to return it for a reason I can't quite remember. It was something along the lines of not wanting an investigation on the body so they wouldn't get in trouble. I used to occasionally work at one of the outdoor carts in front of the castle at Disneyland. There's water in various areas of the park, so we got lots of ducks, and in the springtime, the babies would hatch and walk around with their mothers. People don't always pay attention to where they are going, and sometimes step on one of them, usually killing them. If I was able, I would step away from my cart to escort a family of ducks to safety. I've seen security guards, the ones in white shirts with blue hats, escorting baby ducks around. Sometimes regular cast members, too. It's sweet and also in the park's best interest because no one wants to see a baby duck get stepped on. There are also night herons who hang around the Disney waterways during baby duck season and eat them up like popcorn. I was on the TTC resort platform working the night of the monorail crash. It will be 13 years this July, and I still wake up screaming from time to time. There is no amount of therapy that will or can erase that memory from my mind. Obligatory, not me, but I went to college with a woman who played Snow White. She said she wanted to quit on her very first day because she had so many screaming, vomiting, angry, hungry, drooling children handed to her for photos. She said it was the absolute worst. I'm not sure how long she stuck it out for, but I know it wasn't long. Yeah, this isn't a great temperament for being a children's entertainer. There's nothing wrong with it. But if you're the type to experience that and not walk away saying kids are the best part of the job, then this probably is not the job for you. Like if your day would be ruined by a dog puking on you and touching cat pee, you probably should not volunteer at an animal shelter. Thanks for watching. Consider subscribing for more videos.